Let's do this. All right, we are here. It is time. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to get into the room, but today we're absolutely going to dive into the 12 elements that your endocrinologist is not going to recommend to you to help you heal your thyroid. Hey, Donna, glad to see you on a call. Hi, Ann Bourdreau. It's so good to see you both here tonight. I hope you're doing well. And we're to all those people who are starting to come in, if you're seeing this and you're not able to comment um, or interact with us, be sure to register next time. I'll start doing these. Hey, Sorrel, good to see you, darling. Glad you could make it here tonight. You are part of my witness to some of the things that we are absolutely going to cover this evening. We're just going to dive a little deeper into some things that I think you know a lot about, and that you are actually working through and have been and doing so well. Patty G's in the house. Good to see you, my dear. All right, the quorum is building, building, and building. We're going to give it to about, let's see, we'll give it 2 more minutes and then we're going to dive in because I did get logged in a little late, but I wanted to use this new feature on my software with you guys. So now we can start doing these type of talks on here. This is way easier than it has been in the past. So I'm excited to get started with this tonight. You know, the thyroid, I think, really gets way too much beat down in the wellness community. And it's just because of this hyper focus that we tend to get from our allopathic doctors when we are diagnosed with a thyroid condition. And the sad part about being diagnosed with a thyroid condition, whether it be hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, is they've been waiting. They've been watching your blood stats for quite a bit of time, maybe just looking at your T3 or T4, T3 levels and TSH levels, and that's it, right? And there's so much more to the story. And this is why women on hormone replacement therapies don't get better. In fact, the majority of every client that I work with who's on hormone replacement therapy is getting worse and worse year by year the longer that they're on these meds. As long as you're on these meds, and it's a fancy word for hormone replacement therapy, and it's a fancy word for bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, they're all lies to your endocrine system. They are all lies. They're lying to your body, so your body will never balance in that manner. You're going to have an extremely difficult time doing that. And if you keep taking things, taking Synthroid and that type of hormone constantly over and over and over, at some point, you're likely going to develop some more, you're going to develop some more problems. Some problems that you may have been told that you're going to avoid by going on hormone replacement therapy. Hormone replacement therapy, especially long-term use, has been seen in studies to show bone loss. You're losing your bone density. So, you really got to weigh what you're doing with these medications, because especially something like hormones, because they're absolutely telling you forever, right? And then you'll come back in 2 years and there'll be a new forever hormone that you need to take. Maybe you need pellets. Maybe start off with progesterone. Now, 2 years later, estrogen isn't right. 2 years after that, testosterone's off. And so now they've got all these various cocktails going into your body, lying to your hypothalamus, lying to your pituitary gland. So how can they possibly tell the truth to the thyroid? Your pituitary sends the THA signal directly to your thyroid. But why is your endocrinologist not talking about fixing your pituitary gland? These are some things to start to consider as we go through this talk day, and feel free to drop what you can in the comments. I'll try to move on to those, but we do have quite a bit of information that we will cover tonight. But remember this, thyroid conditions are not alone. They do not stand alone, and they're typically a trailing indicator of other problems gone awry. And we'll cover where that kind of starts, okay? So first and foremost, let me introduce myself. If you do not know me, if you are new to this, to me, or new to this call or what have you, and we're just meeting, I am Ken Newbill. I am known as the Health Transformation Specialist. I am a functional nutritionist, holistic nutritionist, hair tissue mineral analysis expert, practitioner, and a cleanse and detoxification specialist. I help my ladies. I mainly work with women who are over the age of 45, get their life back, right? To get away from the lies and all the garbage that's been holding them back, year after year after year, keeping them from living their best life and following down the trail of tears of lies and things that simply don't work and are never going to work, more than likely, until you get some of these fundamental ideals understood and actually started executing some of these as you start to move through some things to help you rebalance your body. All right. So that's what we're going to start. This is going to be a pretty straightforward, a little aggressive tonight because I really want you guys to get as much of this information as possible. So get your pens out. I won't be putting up any presentations today. We're going to talk. And if I see things that pop up on this comment chat box here, I will start addressing some of the things that I see. Kiki, I'm glad you're here, my dear. Glad you could make it. Yeah, we're going to throw down tonight. So share this with somebody right now. Share this link with somebody right now who you know needs to hear this type of information, who's struggling, who's on Synthroid, who's on Armor, who's on whatever thyroid medication, has been on it for 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I've known some people that have been on thyroid medications for as long as 30 years and they still feel like crap. Got to ask you a question. What kind of, when we are absolutely doing the same things and expecting different results, that's a definition of insanity. And that's how insane some of our doctors are in this country, is they'll keep doing the same thing, expecting you to get better, and you literally don't. In fact, you get worse. And we've got to cease that. So let's dig into the material. We're going to talk about 12 elements. The first element that I want to bring to your attention is a mineral called boron. Boron is not boring, right? It's important. And because it has a major effect on the thyroid function, because it's strategically, and as you'll find, we're going to focus on a few of these elements are all centered on conversion. A lot of them have a lot to do with converting what your thyroid produces the most of. So when your thyroid receives the signal from your pituitary to produce thyroid hormone, that THH, that thyroid hormone synthesis signal, comes from the pituitary gland, right? So hormones get fixed from top down, guys. Top down, top down. Signaling, thyroid signals come from pituitary, adrenal signals come from the hypothalamus, all up here in the trinity, right? Hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and pineal gland. Okay, so boron is involved in that conversion from T4 to T3 because that T3 is what actually gets in the cells, and that's what we actually use. It's that form of the hormone that the body actually uses, but the thyroid has to produce plenty of T4 and then allow the body to convert it to T3. And there's quite a few stages of opportunity along the way that define how or if this will actually happen. And then once it is converted, will it travel and actually enter the cell? And so this is a big part of what I do with my clients and why I use the level of labs that I use with my clients from a functional perspective to understand some of this information, because it can really help us get to solving their wellness crisis sooner than later, right? So that T3, which occurs predominantly in your peripheral tissues, that's a cofactor for an enzyme called deiodinase. And notice that you hear iodine in there, okay? Because you probably heard, and I would assume if you join this call, you likely know what a thyroid is, know what it, probably heard of some of these things that we'll likely talk about, but maybe not have assembled them all together. But I shouldn't have to give you a class on thyroid tonight. And that's not what we're going to do. We're going to cover these elements that you're likely not hearing or learning about from your doctor so that you can start to take some better action to actually solve your crisis with your thyroid and the rest of your endocrine system, because there's more that's wrong that your doctor's not pointing out. If you have a thyroid condition, there's other things that are absolutely going to be off that, and their blood test or whatever tools they're using to assess you haven't quite found yet. Okay, so you got to have adequate levels of boron to have good, efficient production of that T3 conversion. And that's what's going to, that's part of playing the role of what's going to ensure the thyroid hormone activity is proper. But then one of the big things that you can't ever get away from with thyroid, and we'll dig deeper into this as we move on, is the calcium to boron relationship. because boron plays an active role in calcium metabolism. And that's just absolutely crucial for proper thyroid function, simply because in most women, I would say, the majority of people are being diagnosed mainly for Hashimoto's, in terms of hypothyroidism. That just means underperforming thyroid. I would assume that 80 to 90% of the people on this call that are interested are hypothyroid or have some inclination towards that level, because that's what most of our nation is at in the United States. And then there are people who are hyper. So there's a little bit of similarities in there, but there's definitely some strike differences in which you have to do some different type of tweaking and work. But underlying that is the same foundational elements of support from a nutritional standpoint. Okay. So that calcium metabolism is huge, because boron helps regulate the calcium levels and influences the metabolism of things like vitamin D. Like how do you metabolize vitamin D coming into the body naturally? Because that's heavily involved in calcium absorption. But optimal calcium balance is critical for thyroid hormone synthesis and release. But also, let's not just forget the thyroid. That also has a lot to do with the parathyroid hormone, PTH. So that affects levels in the body. And there's some other cofactors here that I'll cover with you, like magnesium. Okay. Um, Boron does a great job at keeping magnesium in solution because it's essential, like critical for this T4 to T3 conversion, just like boron. So boron actually it's a supporting element for magnesium to stay in proper solution in the cells, which is great. And magnesium, therefore, helps calcium regulate better. And a lot of women that I find that have thyroid issues have incredibly poor calcium metabolism. Like they have maybe off the charts calcium, where they might be over 165% milligrams worth of calcium in their hair tissue, right? And what that means is they're basically calcified. They're creating calcium shell problems where there will be cellular receptor sites that need to absorb thyroid hormone and may not be able to, because maybe those cellular sites are calcified and not allowing the hormone to actually dock on its proper receptor site to get into the cell. So boron, keep that one. Another underestimated one that doesn't get talked about a lot is chromium. Chromium also involved in that conversion factor, right? Same thing in that deiodination process that we talked about earlier to help with that enzyme, because minerals support enzymatic creation. Okay, they support enzymatic function, and enzymes do all the functioning. They do so much function in the human body. So if you don't have the foundational elements appropriately balanced and in your body to be utilized, or in a bioavailable format, like we were talking about calcium earlier, we go, oh, I got tons of calcium, but it's not even available to you. It's becoming kind of toxic in your body, and it's not available to be used appropriately in your body. So sometimes you can see these types of things in the way that we test to be able to locate and find these irregularities and bring them back into balance. Um, Chromium is normally off. So the thing about folks that are dealing with thyroid conditions is, more than likely, especially hypothyroid, there's going to be some level of poor metabolism, and it's probably been going on for a long time, which is very connected here, because more than likely you have some level of insulin resistance. Okay. And chromium is critical to that function to be able to have good supporting opportunity for insulin sensitivity. Oh yeah. So chromium's role is like indirectly linked to the thyroid. So that insulin resistance, which that's the condition in which they say the cells become less responsive to the effects of insulin, trying to carry sugar, get that into the cell, etc. But ultimately, that can impair your thyroid conversion and metabolism. Uh, but if you get your chromium balanced appropriately, then your insulin sensitivity will get better. So if you've been struggling with just insulin resistance, and maybe you've tried multiple things, but you haven't inspected and checked out your chromium in relationship to other things, that might be a big deal. And guess what? This is something I see always out of balance with pre-diabetics and diabetics. Same difference that comes with the magnesium and calcium part, because they're very much attached to that insulin as well. See how these are working together? Um, so chromium, we know it's going to impact. Now, two that you probably likely hear all the time for thyroid health is what? Iodine and selenium. Iodine and selenium, absolutely. We know iodine is super critical. It's a huge missing gaping hole in the typical standard American diet. Even a healthy American diet tends to lack quite a bit of iodine, because we're just not getting quite enough to make up typically for our life. People have no clue how deficient they are in iodine, and so many women would be feeling so much better if they had the proper levels of iodine in their body, to help with that hormone synthesis for the thyroid. You got to have strong iodine levels. The chromium supplementation will help your iodine uptake. So sometimes it's not just about taking things. And this is why I always teach my clients, when we're talking about nutritional and mineral balancing, that it's not about just filling a bucket, right? We've all kind of get this concept of on TV and various, um, resources online that kind of bring this fill the bucket mantra. And yeah, to a level, the things have to be present. Your nutrients need to be present in your body. But what's more critical is how the biochemistry works between those elements, and making sure that they're there in proper balance, because too much of one thing can throw off something else. So if you're out there over supplementing, let's say, I don't know, maybe you're doing 30,000 units of vitamin D a day. Well, that could be a little too much for a lot of people, and could start throwing off things like potassium and other minerals that will cause more problems down the road. And you're thinking, but I'm taking a really good vitamin, right? It's a good, safe vitamin, right? Maybe, maybe not, because it's all about context and how you apply it. And so when we supplement in the dark without actually knowing the status of our nutrients, then we assume some risk there, right? And vitamins aren't necessarily going to kill you. There's not a whole lot of cases where people have killed themselves with vitamins, but you could be causing yourself some discomfort, maybe working on some limited knowledge, and you're executing in a way that shouldn't be done long term. But you don't know these things because maybe you started doing a program because of the stab and jab scenario that we've been going through for the last 3 years. And some dude on the TV kept telling you what to do, and you listen to them all day. They know nothing about you. So you start supplementing. Be careful, my folks, because just in that alone, we can start creating problems that we didn't need. We start creating problems for ourselves, right? So keep that plainly where to start. Okay. So let's see. Amen. Indeed. I'm just checking some comments here. I'm dropping back in on you all. I know I've been running my mouth for a minute. And how to get the balanced minerals. We'll definitely cover that. Is bioidentical testosterone replacement for anti-aging a male a no-no? Here's the deal. Alan, I'm going to answer that real quick, and I'm going to get back on topic here, and then I'm going to come back at the end, and I'm really going to dig into some of these comments. But anytime I look at anything, any hormone related anything, and I know it really depends on where we're going, why not focus on the things that impact your testosterone opportunity at a higher level, right? Being a man, being a man and wanting to have that manliness for my life, right? That mots, that power, that strength, that edge that a lot of men look for. Why aren't we doing all the other building blocks to get testosterone fired up? First thing, why are we not lifting? We're doing resistance training, doing sprints, fasting, right? And then we can actually supplement some things that can actually help that whole trifecta between testosterone and human growth hormone and IGF factors to actually enhance us instead of going straight for a hormone. Anytime you can nurture your body to actually produce a hormone, something that it's supposed to make, that's way better than just giving it a synthetic form. Because like I said earlier, bioidentical doesn't really add up. Did you make it? I don't think you did. I still believe that bioidentical came out of somebody's lab. Although maybe slightly better from an absorption standpoint, it still is not telling your body the truth. And you need to tell your entire endocrine system the truth, your digestive system the truth, so that it can do proper function. If we keep telling it lies, then things are going to be off. So if I start taking a thyroid hormone, for example, and it starts to what is it doing? It's making it look like there's plenty of THC out there, right? My TSH is going lower and lower and lower. Why? Because you've got all this T4 and T3 floating around in the bloodstream. So why should it make any more signals if you're supplementing, if you're taking medications for that? So we send these missed signals, and then next thing we know, something else is kind of coming off the hinge. Insulin resistance, Chris. So insulin resistance is really more about your body's ability to um, to actually accept insulin into the cells. And if you typically look at an overweight person, you will notice that overweight people tend to be insulin resistant or on some level or some factor thereof. Depends on how long it is going on. But um, understanding this from a, put it this way, I want you to think about this for yourself because I know what you got going on, right? Think about the pump that you have and how often you take it and how long you've had it and how much weight you've started to gain in the last 3 to 5 years, and you don't really know why, right? Because insulin itself makes us fat. Like that's kind of its job, is to take sugar and put it in fat cells. Okay, so it's part of its job. It's not the only job that insulin has. Okay, but I will come. We can talk more about that at another time. Hopefully on the golf course soon, like this weekend. I really need some therapy. But let's jump back into the flow here because we just covered two elements out of the 12. Okay. And so we talked about what we talked about chromium and we talked about boron. But this next part isn't about a nutrient, it's about an action. It's an elemental action. Okay. There's a strong correlation between thyroid conversion that happens in your liver, and that if your liver is not properly maintained, which, take a look at yourself and be honest, have you ever done any maintenance on your liver? Have you ever cleansed your liver? Have you ever thought about your liver? Has your endocrinologist ever brought up your liver in discussions about the fact that it could be your liver that's causing you prolonged long-term issues with your thyroid? Could that be an issue? I'm going to read something from a study that I thought would be cool for you guys to listen to. Um, I'm just taking a snippet out of it, so I'm not going to kill you with this whole study. But I thought this little paragraph was nice. Thyroid hormones have a significant role in hepatic lipid metabolism. Acting through the thyroid hormone B receptors, they can lead to hepatic fat accumulation and stimulate hepatic lipogenesis. Also, thyroid hormones modify lipid accumulation. This is fats, lipid accumulation in the liver, affecting leptin and androstenedione. These are two really important hormones uh, for lots of things, but androstenedione is kind of known as a skinny hormone. I'm sure you've heard plenty about leptin out there. But then cytokines that have significance in the pathogenesis of hepatic steatosis. Leptin stimulates beta oxidation and suppresses lipogenesis, while an inversion correlation has been found in many studies to exist between androstenedione, triglycerides, and low density cholesterol, LDL. Don't get all crazy with me on cholesterol right now. Previous studies have shown that not only thyroid hormones, but also thyroid hormone derivatives provide an important contribution to hepatic lipid metabolism. According to results in vitro studies, thyroid hormones derivatives lowers excess fat in cultured hepatocytes. So check this out. What's really cool about this piece here is we're getting this connection between what most people would think are completely disconnected systems, right? That your liver and your thyroid hormone and the ability to metabolize lipids and fats and not have buildup or accumulation are directly influenced by each other. Right here, if you are not focused on your liver, you are not likely ever going to get your healing when it comes to thyroid issues because of this big piece right here. And there's many other factors. That's just one part of the study. that we can bring out. But there's a strong connection between liver performance and your hormonal ability to actually convert said hormones, because over 20% of all that conversion is happening in the digestive system between and the thyroid and whatnot. So in that gut, your gut has to be healthy, right? So not just thyroid, but also gut. And by getting into that liver, man, opening up those pathways, getting good, strong development between the liver, liver's ability to metabolize fats, to use the hormone appropriately, convert that T4 to T3. This is big stuff. This is good stuff, right? Um, so don't leave this part out of your equation. Many people watching this may have never done anything with their liver, which is why we do a lot of liver cleansing in my business, because this moves the needle big time. Okay. Um, so cleanse their liver. I recommend using and going deep with this, because cleansing your liver is not a one-time shot deal. It isn't for anybody. You're over 40, you've been on the planet for years or more, you've never done a liver cleanse, and maybe you live most of your life not living so great and healthy, drank plenty of alcohol, ate tons of sugar and flour, processed foods, yada yada yada, drank tap water most of your life. Check it. You got work to do. And the liver, it's not a matter of if, it's just when. And the sooner you start, the better. And the more focus you give there, the better off you're going to see other symptoms dissipate, just because your liver is able to operate at a higher capacity that you haven't had probably since you were in your teens or lower 20s. Okay. To get that action back is so imperative. Remember, the liver has live right in the word, right? Has live right in the word itself. So it's super critical. It's an amazing organ, and we're still finding out more and more functions of what it does. It easily does over 500 to 600 processes that we know of to date, and growing, that we're steady learning more and more about the liver's ability. Not to mention the fact that you can regrow your liver, which is amazing. It's one of the few organs that we can absolutely regrow at a high capacity, even if you had things like cirrhosis. So I like to use enzymatic cleanses, herbal support, daily, daily support with eating plenty of raw fruits to support that liver along with the kidneys. So there's lots of good work that you can do there. But what's critical is get that into your 12 elements. I got to cleanse my liver. Okay, got to get it done. Now, the next element we'll talk about is copper, and then I'll jump back into the questions once I cover this. Copper, right? Um, Copper and thyroid hormone synthesis. We know copper is required for the activity of enzymes that are involved in that synthesis to metabolize the thyroid hormone. Copper, and there's different types of copper peptides out there, and in the body, but they play major roles, right? Copper is a master mineral in the body, doing all types of cool things, handling infections, and it's an antimicrobial, right? So if you've got lots of yeast in your body, UTIs and things that always happen, and your copper balance is probably garbage, and you need to get that rectified, so that you can get away from those systemic issues. But in this part, conversion of T4 to the active form of T3, copper has to be there, and it has to be there in the proper levels, because without it, you just can't convert. Your conversion process will be really rickety if your copper levels are not good. And why that's important to understand, and why I bring up copper in the relationship of hypothyroidism, for example, is the fact that more than likely, if you are hypothyroid, there's a 90% plus chance that you're a slow metabolizer dealing with some level of copper irregularity or toxicity. And by irregularity, I mean it's not bioavailable to actually work and support your body, and it's becoming toxic in your cells and starting to build up because it can't mobilize. It's not able to attach to some factors that allow it to live and be its best life, so that it can then participate in other processes in the body to allow them to work appropriately. Okay, something as simple as iron regulation in the body is heavily dependent on copper's ability to be bioavailable. So a lot of people that are struggling with so-called iron issues really probably have a copper issue, and that copper issue could be pointing all the way back to an adrenal issue, that could then also be starting up here in the hypothalamus, since we know that speaks to the adrenals. So the biggest thing that you should have just taken away from that conversation and what I've shared with you thus far is if your doctor is solely focused on your thyroid, you're never going to get better. You're not, especially if they're only focused on hormone replacement therapy. You're not going to heal. And this is a healable condition. Okay. Um, let's see. The thyroid is also, the thyroid is also susceptible to oxidative damage, right? And when we have that level of oxidation stress, typically from a high metabolic activity, and we get what we call reactive oxygen species, or what I like to call like cellular exhaust, right? From doing things within the cell, we create ROS, or reactive oxygen species, and copper integral component to something you may have heard of called superoxide dismutase. That's an enzyme, SOD, right? It's a big one. SOD gets used for lots of things. It's a major one that you want to make sure your body is producing well, because that SOD will neutralize those free radicals and from that ROS, from that reactive oxygen species. So it's the cleanup for that exhaust, right? We just can't have exhaust and trash coming out of the cell and not being maintained. We got to clean up that garbage so that we can protect the thyroid cells from getting additional oxidative damage from that process, right? So by supporting that antioxidant, copper absolutely will contribute to the overall effectiveness of how your thyroid will regulate and work. Okay, so let me jump back into the questions. Let me change my screen here real quick and see what else we got going on. Double check. All right. Band-aids. All right, looking good. All right, so let's roll back out of here. Let me check my time. 6:30. So we've been going for about 30 minutes, right? Where do you start with high TSH? You know what? You start by looking, for me, on any hormonal irregularity, especially when we're asking why are certain glands producing what we consider to be high, is you need to start probably with a blood panel that's a full blood panel, to understand all the various processes of the sequestering for TSH, what's going on at the actual thyroid, like what is it producing from a T4 and T3 perspective, understanding your free T3, free T4. If you have a hair tissue mineral analysis, then we can get a better understanding of these minerals that we're talking about that affect all of this, so that you can be working at an ionic level in the body. And by working at the ionic level, we can affect so many more things that are upstream, because these ionic minerals are what are absolutely affecting the creation, support, and the status of how enzymes are running in your body. Okay, so we can't let go of that type of understanding, because that is important. That is a critical piece there. But you need to get a complete picture, because I would say the average practitioner is not going to give you all the labs that you need. I've actually had plenty of clients that I've said, hey, if you're going to go get labs with your current doctor, go ahead and do that. And they have been fought tooth and nail just to get all the information that they need. Meanwhile, we're healing all of their thyroid conditions and they're getting better and better. Yet, they still want to shove that pill in their face and not acknowledge the fact that they're getting better and they need to adjust their medications down. So that's what happens here. We work with people all the time, here in my practice, and I help them get their medications reduced and out of here so that you can actually get all this stuff working appropriately. But let's not forget this, right? We talked about the liver, okay? You know what happens to a lot of people with thyroid issues is because thyroid hormone is so critical to this. So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Constipation. We have a constipated nation, okay? And what I mean by constipation is this. If you're not moving your bowels, frequently, based on how many real meals you have, some of us have a hard time with that because we eat all day long. But if you actually have dedicated meal times and you're not snacking in between, then you should have a movement for every meal. Okay. And then understanding, well, how fast are the movement coming? Because when we're talking about somewhere around 40 feet of intestinal tract that the average person is carrying, you could have quite a few meals logged up in this whole system, especially if you don't fast. Um, you don't take any breaks from eating, and you're a steady eater, like you just eat a lot. Then your system is likely full of waste and food that needs to be processed. And there's nothing saying necessarily just because you're pooping 3 times a day that you are regular. What's more important to understand is what's your transit time from when you eat. So if you want to check that out, you could do a beet test, right? Eat some beets and time it to where you see them again, red beets, and you will see them again on the other side. And that will let you know how fast your meals are moving, which is important. All right. But constipation absolutely depends a lot on your thyroid hormone. So if thyroid hormone is not working appropriately, it aids in the constipation story. And I've seen this more than once. I probably say over 15 or 20 times with various clients who have been constipated and they're eating all the right things, but they can't get the result. And until we got it all worked out to get that thyroid firing appropriately, things got soft, things got regular, and all good things started to happen. Because you also have to remember, when you're constipated and you're holding on to feces for a long time, in that lower intestine, man, that is a harboring opportunity for parasites and all the toxins that they have, which just kind of acerbate the whole lack of absorption issue, toxins. If you can't get the nutrients in, you can't heal your thyroid. Okay, so we've got to get the nutrients in, which means you need a clear, high functioning gut. You need to go in and get all the gunk out that's been building up in your gut for these past 40 plus years since you've been on planet Earth, eating all the things, doing all the things, having all the good times. I'm not judging, I've done it too. So just letting you know that is a critical part of what you're going to need to do. You need to reset your gut. Okay, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. So you've got to cleanse that gut down to get it all out, get the gunk all out. And then we need to reestablish balance there. We need to repopulate that gut. We need to test and see what the function is in your gut. Are you making B vitamins to support your thyroid from your gut? Are you doing that? Right? A lot of people aren't. Okay. Do you actually have the things necessary to break down your food so you can actually get to the B12 in your foods to support your energy and all the other B's that you need? So absorption, assimilation of nutrients, way more important than what you're eating. Like I'm eating great, but if you can't absorb it or assimilate it, then it kind of doesn't matter. Okay. It's kind of worse than that because you're at a net loss. You're using up nutrients and hey, Gonzo, I would say go eat a bowl of them. Just a nice bowl, right? About that big. 1 or 2 beets. And you can eat them raw. You could roast them and you're going to see it. You're going to see them come on out the next the back door at some point. Okay. All right, let's jump to the next element. And what do I have up here for you now? Jumping around screens, so bear with me. Before we jump into that, I wanted to tap back on copper in relationship to another mineral. Okay. Because copper's availability and its use can be very much affected. You heard me talk about iron, but it can also be affected by zinc because they do have a delicate balance in the body to affect their absorption and utilization. And this is important because zinc deficiency can interfere with copper absorption, lead you to copper deficiency or toxicity issues, and absolutely disrupt that thyroid function. And the iron is the same way. They have a co-mingling relationship. Iron can affect copper, copper can affect iron. So we've got to keep these in proper balance and proper alignment. We talked a little bit about iodine already. I don't want to beat that horse dead, but iodine deficiency is one of the leading causes of that issue of hypothyroidism. Okay, but it could be mainly because it's not being absorbed, but it is lacking a lot in our diet. And to get that in your diet easily just start taking in some level of seaweed. Okay. If you're not a heavy greens eater from the land, and try eating greens from the sea, right? Where you can get the iodine, the natural bioavailable iodine that you can eat. This is assuming that your gut's working and all that. If you're not doing great with your gut right now for any of the things that I'm mentioning to you, then you'll want to probably stick around at the end so I can tell you what you can do, what products to use, or whatever, so that you can actually dig into this a little deeper, okay, and start using some things to help yourself. But that iodine impact on the thyroid is influenced by selenium. It's influenced by iron. So when you hear people say, "Oh, just take this, just take that," and they don't get the result, a lot of times it's because they don't have the cofactors in proper alignment to support that nutrient's absorption capability and to get it balanced with the other synergists like selenium and iron in this case, right? So it's not just iodine, it's also understanding your selenium and your iron. And Kiki, my lovely friend, she dropped a bomb about magnesium. Well, here's the deal on magnesium. You need it. You need it for everything. It is so big in the human body that anyone who's likely not supplementing magnesium and eating a standard American diet, you're losing. You're losing. If you're not highly focused on um, high magnesium foods, if you have a good functioning gut, um, you're missing. And those are going to be like in your greens and your nuts and whatnot. You need plenty of magnesium because it is involved in in several stages of thyroid hormone production. It's a cofactor to the enzymes all over the place. It helps with vitamin D conversion, which is essential to the thyroid as well. Adequate magnesium levels are critical to support the hormones and maintain proper function. That conversion, right? T4 to T3 again, if these aren't all there, it's going to break that enzyme. If it's not there, because that deiodinase enzyme that we talked about earlier, it has to have magnesium as a cofactor. It's a must. And we're really low. Most people are very low on magnesium in general, and that's taking it from the right perspective. You can't really find that out on let's say, um, blood test. A regular standard blood test is not going to give you an accurate look at magnesium simply because only 1% of your magnesium is ever in your whole body is ever in your bloodstream. It's an intercellular nutrient. So if it's extracellular, if it's leaking a lot into the blood where it should not be, we have higher levels there, then that's letting us know that there's something that the body's trying to compensate for. It's maybe using magnesium for inflammation or other things, but we definitely want to keep magnesium in play in the cell. Okay. So we will ensure that we keep proper magnesium, big one there, because of magnesium's cofactors that we linked with boron earlier. And then there's also the connection between selenium and zinc, right? So these factors coming together to work are very important. Last one is manganese. Um, Let me see, not the last one, the next one is manganese, and I'm going to jump back into something else that's not a mineral. So manganese is involved in the synthesis of thyroid hormones as another cofactor, but this is for a different enzyme. This enzyme is called thyroxine synthase. That enzyme is responsible for incorporation of iodine into the amino acid tyrosine. See, the stuff connects. And since we're on, I'll talk a little bit more about manganese, and I'm going to actually start talking about amino acids in relationship to your thyroid recovery. So we know that enzyme is responsible for like that amino acid tyrosine, getting iodine into there, right? Which is a key part of the thyroid hormone production. And those manganese levels are essential to, of course, the synthesis and function. Now, it also serves as a cofactor for the enzyme manganese superoxide dismutase. Now, you heard me talk about superoxide dismutase earlier, SOD. This is MNSOD because it actually also participates as a powerful antioxidant enzyme in the mitochondria. right? In your energy center, in your mitochondria cells. So got to get that in there for that. And let's take a look at another thing that I want, another element that's super important. Okay. So we talked about the liver. We talked a bit about the gut, right? In that gut, we know we've got to deal with top down. So I'll give you a little bit from top down. Are we salivating well? Are we doing good in the pH balance of our stomach acids? Are we producing enough stomach acids? People that have thyroid problems typically don't. And so this is where part of the digestive system starts to break down because they're not able to actually start breaking down the foods or protect themselves with the proper acidity in the stomach. So it's kind of like the first line of defense. So if that isn't hot enough, acidic enough, we may be letting in bacteria and parasites and things that we don't want getting further down the pipe of our digestive pathway. We talked a bit about constipation and how low thyroid hormone affects the gut that way, but also all the additional toxins that we've not ever cleansed out that might be living there, maybe from environmental, but also from the parasites releasing their stuff, or mold and fungus, yeast releasing their toxins into us. And so we need to go through a gut healing modality. We need to get that gut all cleaned out. We need to make sure that the acidities and the enzymes are firing appropriately to break down our foods very well. Very, very well. We got to break this stuff down. Otherwise, we leave lots of opportunity for opportunistic bacteria to overgrow. Okay. So, liver, gut, get these elements of minerals in proper alignment for yourself. Selenium, we talked a lot about. Zinc, we talked a lot about. Um, but I'm gonna point on just one more thing with selenium. Okay, selenium acts as a cofactor for the enzyme glutathione peroxidase. Now, that enzyme plays a very critical role in protecting your thyroid cells. So it's like a safeguard from oxidative damage. You remember we talked about that reactive oxygen species stuff earlier. So this helps neutralize the free radicals and maintains the strength of your thyroid tissues and supports just the overall health of your thyroid. So we got some very specific connections between these nutrients and the thyroid, either from a cellular perspective, enzyme perspective, um, cleanup free radicals and protecting that thyroid factor or conversion. So it's not simple, right? It's not exactly simple. That's why getting a good look and understanding these elements, um, they lead to the fastest recovery. They lead to very fast recovery for these conditions when you're willing to do the foundational work. The hardest part, not really that hard in my eyes, if you've been living with thyroid conditions for a long many years, you know, in a matter of months, you could be on a whole nother playing field with your thyroid, right? You could be on a whole nother playing field with the symptoms that come from the hypothyroid condition or Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disorder. So brought autoimmune back up because this is where you might find some relief. So we've covered 9 minerals. We've covered, so that's 9, and 10 is the liver, 11 is the gut, and 12, I'll end on this one, is epigenetics. Now, epigenetics, I think, sometimes gets overdone. And I like to use epigenetics as a way to correlate acute information with someone's ability over the long haul, just to get another vantage point to understand them. Because what we know about our DNA is that we can affect it, right? Um, so if we can understand it, then we can affect it in a positive way, and it can absolutely turn things in a much better situation for some people. Because autoimmune disorders, there's always some epigenetic potential, right? There's always some genetic potential there that we need to understand. There's typically always some level of leaky gut, meaning that your gut is leaking foods and stuff out of the wall lining, the mucosa lining of your small intestines, and that's not good. That's supposed to be a closed system, okay? So we need to keep all the food stuff in the food system, or we're in trouble. All right. So we need to make sure that we are keeping that cleaned up, that we get it healed. So if you've had leaky gut, and this is what I find with people who have had long-standing autoimmune disorders, is they never healed their gut. They never did it. They thought they did, but they never verified. They didn't do the right testing to actually show and feel and also see their body respond appropriately, whether it be from a blood test, or seeing how conversion is working, things that were off. How can you validate if it's back on? You got to validate with testing. So sometimes you can just feel it. That can be the best test, of course, right? I feel better. I'm doing good. I don't have any symptoms. Then you're likely on the right side of that equation. But I always say this: if you can test, do that instead of guess, if you can, right? Seaweed salad from Japanese restaurant. Do they put sugar in it? Yes. If you're eating the seaweed salad, there is always some level of sugar in that. What you want to put your hands on, and is you want to get something like um, kelp, right? Kelp is a good one. Um, sea asparagus is good. And I like sea asparagus because it's 100% organic minerals that you'll be taking in. The iodine will be there as well. You can also, some people actually get iodine from sea salts, right? And I'm pulling back on sea salt and rock salt and going more with organic salts that are plant based, like you're actually eating the plant and it's got some saltiness to it. Because I feel the body just does better on organic minerals. So you can get your iodine in that way. Yeah, your RBC is good, but it doesn't always. I'm glad it went up. I'm absolutely glad it went up. If I was to do any type of blood test, that would be the one I would do. And I would still balance that against an HTMA to understand the correlation there, to make sure that what we're seeing in the RBC is reflective and appropriate based on magnesium against other minerals, right? The relationship factor, not just filling that bucket, but understanding how do these correlate to each other. That's what's really important at the end of the day. Okay. Um, let's see, what else did I have for you guys? Do 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 do. Let me check my notes here real quick, y'all. Ask me another question. Ask me another question, y'all. So that epigenetics and DNA standpoint. So just to let you know what we do, right? How do I wrap this all up in a bow? Okay, that's what we do. So we obviously don't just focus on thyroid. Um, we absolutely focus on holistic wellness, and that's probably what you heard today. You started to see things connecting and understanding this is bigger than just walking in, seeing a number on a chart, and taking a pill. It's bigger than that. However, it's absolutely important that if you have never checked the status of your gut, you have never checked the status of your minerals, right? Then you've never checked out your DNA and how that correlates, and you've never taken everything that you're feeling on a regular basis. Like, what kind of symptoms are you having, right? Have you ever mapped all of those together? Because when you start mapping those kind of things together, you can correlate quite a lot of information and get a really clear and direct path on how to achieve your healing. Okay. Oh, Mary, I love you. I love working with you too. Thank you for saying that. I love working with you too, my dear. So we have to always come back to that holistic understanding that we're not just concerned about a gland in the endocrine system. We're concerned about the endocrine system, because if I can balance the system, then I balance the glands, right? And that's what you want. You don't want to balance thyroid. You want a balanced body. Yeah. You want to get to the root causes as to why your thyroid went out of whack in the first place. And we've alluded to some of those connections already, right? So it could start, all things start in the gut. If your gut's not flowing and doing well, you're going to start having poor nutrient absorption, even if you're eating all the right foods. So you're not getting it in. Then we start looking at all these nutrients that you're missing. So how are we going to get it in, right? So everybody who's on the call, you guys are obviously going to get, if you registered for this, if you're not just looking at this online and you registered, then you're going to get a follow-on email from this, right, to give you the recording, number one, and then you'll be on my email list. And what I will do for those who are not currently working with me, because I've got plenty of clients that are on here who know what I'm talking about or experienced this already, who are already doing better with their thyroid or getting reducing their medications or already off medications for the thyroid, and they are working on natural elements or just food, a couple of supplements, and they're feeling great and they're healing. They're on their healing path. Um, so yes, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, y'all. But if you don't want to go down the 7 factors of disease, okay, things like thyroid conditions are very much connected to cancer. I mean, people get thyroid cancer like it's running out of style now, okay? And if you have thyroid cancer, it doesn't mean you don't have cancer. Your body is cancerous, okay? So thank you, Anne. I'm so glad you made it tonight. So what I want you to do is, Alan, you asked a great question. So here's what I'm going to do. Anybody who wants to work with me, it's easy. My last name is Newbill. My website is New Bill of Health. You can reach out to me directly on Facebook, Instagram. You'll find me under New Bill of Health. But ultimately, all it takes is a discussion. Jump on my calendar. I have a calendar link. Get on my calendar link. I'm actually going to drop it right here in the comments right now for anybody who wants to connect. And let's have a conversation, and we can talk about the various programs, what you have going. I want to hear about you first. I want to know about what you got going on. And then I can assess if we're the right place for you, right? We're 100% virtual. We only work in the United States. We don't do anything outside of the US any longer. We did up until about a year ago, but we're focused just on the United States. We're 100% virtual. We do everything right over the screen through, telehealth sessions, phone if you need to use phone, or Zoom calls, basically, if you can get online and we can see each other's face. And we walk you from one phase to the next, right? We're going to take in all the context of what you have going on, and we're going to analyze it. We're going to go deep. We're going to look at the DNA of your gut, basically. We're going to see what's going on at the ionic level of your cells, from a mineral balancing and heavy metal toxicity. I didn't even get a chance to talk to you guys about how bad heavy metals affect your thyroid. It's incredible. But think about it this way. You remember how I talked a little bit about zinc earlier, and that if you didn't have zinc in your body at the proper levels, it really does open the door for more heavy metals to be absorbed in your body. So it's part of the equation, often a pretty big part. In fact, it's been said more than once that a lot of what we think about when the thyroid attacks itself, or the body attacks the thyroid, is very much linked to heavy metal toxicity around the thyroid itself, because it's using mimicry. Ionic mimicry, meaning that if it doesn't have the said element that it's looking for, it goes to the trash or the junkyard of the human body where there's heavy metals around, and uses heavy metals that are close in molecular structure to that said element, and puts it in its place so that it can build that enzyme that it may need to support a function in the human body. Okay? This is exactly why, if you do have heavy metal toxicity and you want to help your thyroid out, you do not go jump into a heavy metal toxicity chelation therapy. You do not do that, okay? Because you may be causing yourselves a lot more problems. Remember, I said those heavy metals are being used in very critical processes of your body in place of the element that it actually needs, that's healthy and works good for it. So if you start chelating, which means you start ripping out, detoxing, and pulling out that heavy metal toxicity, you can very much start disrupting function in your body and make yourself worse off than you already are. The best way to do any heavy metal detoxification is to do mineral balancing. Mineral balancing will strengthen your cells to release these heavy metal toxicities at the deepest levels. Some of these so-called chelation therapies are scraping the surface, if at best. So remember that in context, right? All of that matters. I hope this talk helped you guys. I hope this was good for you, but you can go check me out at newbillofhealth.com. You can see me right on my Facebook page at Ken Newbill, and message me right through there if you want to connect with me. And for those who are here, I dropped my calendar right there in the comments. Go over there, book a session. We'll talk. It's a discovery call. We're not going to dive deep on everything you got going on, but I want to hear what you've got going on and what you've done and where your mind is. Because by understanding that, we can understand how we can help you and where you will have a best fit for us to have the greatest amount of success. I'm Ken Newbill, the Health Transformation Specialist, and I want you to always remember that wellness is within you. Take care and good night.